Hello, hello. Welcome to the 7th round of the Competier Open Series. As usual, we are still waiting for a couple people to connect, and then we'll go into qualifying. There we go. I think we're still missing 2 or so cars, but we'll see. Surely they won't miss too much of qualifying. There's Robert. I think it's Vamos missing. He was also late last time. We'll see if he still turns in. So let's go with Thomas onto his first flying lap. Seems to hit T1 quite nicely. One of the new sign-ups, Thomas, in the Open Series. As well as Linus and Tibor. Maybe he started his lap a bit too close to Zillard. Because Thomas seems to be pretty quick. And then Zillard will probably block him, and that will be Thomas' fault. Since he started his lap too close to Zillard. So Thomas has to live with this here now, so accept that he's not getting a clean lap and try to find a better gap. In the meantime, Linus with 28.9 purple sector. Frankly, I'm expecting Linus to win both races today. He's been procrastinating joining our series. I know he's very fast. Like early on the throttle out of the last corner. Seemed a bit hesitant the corner before that he was clearly trying to correct as he's searching for grip. As usual, we won't be on optimal grip here, but the usual low 97%, which is noticeably worse than what you had on the practice server, basically, as the track rubbers in. Zillard with a 37.2. And then Thomas's 39, we know that's not representative. He can do significantly better than that. Robert matching Linus's first sector on Robert's current lap. think we can't see Robert on the track map because he joined the server too late. But he is here, also purple second sector, but that purple second sector goes back to Linus basically immediately, who goes 1/10 faster. Hits the last corner, but it feels as if he would have liked to be back on the throttle a bit earlier there, out of the last turn. Is that going to be better than what Linus has been doing? No. Less than a 10th behind, and I think Linus is improving already again. He comes over the line, is expecting 1 or 2 tenths of improvement. Yes, he goes for a 34.8. I think I know that his PB on the practice server is still around a second or a bit less than a second faster than this. Of course, that's in optimal conditions. We'll see if he still has improvement to show for. And Thomas now in provisional P3, slightly ahead of Zillert. Looked early as if he would be significantly faster than Zillert, so I am expecting him to still gain a bit more. On his current lap, he had a 29.0 first sector. That's a good sign that he is capable of more. Bit hesitant on the throttle there, otherwise he would have gone out the outside onto the grass. Misses the apex here, maybe gets irritated a little bit by Zillert in front again. I think he didn't leave enough of a gap just after when we were watching him the last time in order to ensure he wouldn't go to the back, directly up the back of Zillert again. And goes to the pits. Linus as well. All of them practicing the pit entry, which they don't have to do. But why not? Wang's still searching for his first fast lap. This one, even though it says at the top that he's on a 3 minute something, but looks like an out lap. It's not an out lap. He is on a fast lap. And we'll see how close he can get to Zillert. With a 39.4, still significantly off. It looks as if Vamos is on a similar lap behind him. So we'll just look at that as he slows down a little bit too much into the second to last corner. I think Frank and Vamos somewhat evenly matched in pace here. And we see a lot of them coming out of the pits. 4 drivers currently in T3. They have to make sure that they are finding a decent gap on the track. Vamos 1:43.0, so still significantly slower than Frank. Is going to reset here. Thomas directly in front of Linus on the track here. And then Zillert, but in front of them is Frank, who's going to be going slower than them. So I hope that they don't misjudge the pace difference between the drivers. This is the open series. Everyone can join this. That's why it's called open. And obviously there are significantly slower and significantly faster drivers here on the same track, and they all have to pay a little bit of attention to each other. And I think that's what Thomas is doing here, slowing down significantly. Linus taking the opportunity. Hopefully not too overzealous. Would be a shame if he throws away a good lap because he comes up to Frank. As Robert is on a 28.8 first sector, so that's the session best so far. He's trying everything to try to get Linus' time. Comes out of here cleanly, although it does seem as if Linus is going slightly faster than Thomas right now. Linus also 28.8 first sector, tying Robert. And Thomas 29.1. Behind him, Zillard with a mistake in the first sector. Not sure, because Robert is not on the track map, it's a bit hard to see where he is on the track, but he actually got over the line already, and because of a bad second and third sector, that was not an improvement to his time, so as he comes up to the first sector time line again, he does it again, he does a 28.8 again, so another opportunity to try to match or get ahead of Linus. But doesn't, tries to go on the throttle too early here, honks for the stream, understeers terribly then, and just decides to immediately reset. Let's see if Linus can eke out an improvement. 26.0 is not his personal nor session best, however, I think it's pretty close. So with a very good first sector, this could still be a very slight improvement. It isn't, even though it's a session best third sector. I think he did, I wasn't looking at the top center there, but I think he did roughly the same time again. Let's go on board with Tibor as he goes through T1. He's still searching for a fast lap. Just to make sure that he gets one in. Right now with Vamos's 1:43 should be easy to beat. As long as he gets a somewhat clean lap. Robert purple first sector, purple second sector. Let's see how his third sector is going. You can potentially cut a bit more there on the right side, but he keeps a lot of speed running through, that's very good. Also hits this nicely. If you completely hit the inside curb, it can sometimes unsettle the car a little bit, so that line seemed good as well. The car bouncing a little bit on him as he brakes. Look decent, I would say. What is it over the line? Was it? I'm sure it says it's a 93 points. Is this still his? Was it still his outlap? Then the first and second sector were still from the lap before that, I assume. Very good exit out of T3. 28.7. So yet another opportunity. He seems to be nailing his first sectors, and then everything else still has to come to him. As with 2 minutes and 30 to go, if he comes over the line, he has one more attempt, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he gets 2 more attempts. Tibor now with a 37.8, so clearing Frank and Vamos. I assume that's roughly where he wants to be. Let's see if he can still improve to try to get Zillard. Oh, and Robert on the entry there hits the grass. So this lap is also not it, I assume. It actually didn't look that bad, but I think both Linus's and Robert's times right now are just so good that if you make a mistake like that, there's a very low chance that you will still improve upon them. So Robert coming out the final corner with again a purple first and purple second sector, but at least some small mistake in the third one. And it's a significant improvement. 34.5 is so good. So I said that it looked as if he hadn't lost that much time, but still I wasn't expecting that. A very good lap. Linus also improved. But is currently 1.5 tenths behind as both of them, I think, go on their last attempt. Where is Linus on the track? Yes, he's in T2. So this is the final attempt for both of them. Robert with a 28.8 first sector, so significantly slower than his personal best. And Linus a very bad first sector, so this is not the lap for Linus. So unless any of the drivers behind them pulls something out of the bag now, I think we have Robert on pole, very good second sector. I'm not quite sure how far the first sector is off by, but I assume that he won't, that this won't be an improvement. Unless he did lose a lot of time here as he went over the grass on the entry and then just had, other than that, had such a good third sector that the time was still good. But I can't imagine that. Struggles on the throttle here and that's it, but I think he can still be happy with that. He still tries to finish the lap. But I'm pretty sure he's on pole. Linus's lap not good right now. Thomas not doing significantly better. Also not personal best sectors as he goes into the pit. So no improvement for Thomas. Let's look at Szilard. Personal best first and second sector. Can he make up the 1.6 second gap to Thomas? That's going to be a big task. Looks like he gets out of there cleanly. He was revving a bit low, but sometimes it's worth doing that with these cars. And he does a respectable 36.6, but not enough to clear that extremely big gap. Let's see, I think Tibor is in T1, so I assume this lap is not valid anymore. Frank's still on a valid lap. Vamos also still on a valid lap, but I think this is Vamos' out lap, so if I'm not mistaken, Frank is the only one who can still improve. Bit late on the throttle there. It's just nicely. He takes a lot of curb there, but it didn't look as if it really unsettled the car, so not bad. Lots of steering lock going on as he tries to search for rotation and he just doesn't get it, so he has to let go of the throttle again, then reapply it. I assume that this cost him too much time, but we'll see he's under 37.0 now and he's still on a 37.0 best lap, so not an improvement in that last lap. And Szilard manages to stay in fourth. So, competitive qualifying, Robert on pole, then Linus, who I think didn't quite get it together. I assume he was also expecting that he has the pace for pole, and I think he still believes that he has the pace for pole. Then Thomas with a 0.7 second gap on a respectable P3, both Linus and Thomas new entries here in the Open Series. Then Szilard, Frank, Tibor also new in the Open Series, and then Vamos. Honks angrily. Yes, I wonder if Robert knew that he was on stream when he honked, or if he just honked out of frustration. Sorry if I kind of ignored the chat until now. I was paying full attention to the qualifying action. Was quite happy that Robert showed me how to drive an exit on Laguna. But sometimes it's really nice to have people in front of you who are just slightly faster than you, because then you can actually stay behind if you start to do the things correctly, that they are potentially doing better than you, basically. I'm glad that helped. Szilard cheating, just say, yes, he's just too good, clearly cheating. Three, 4, 5, 6 lights. And they get a well, it looks like Robert had significant wheel spin there off the line. They get into T1 in the order that they were in. It looked as if Szilard was kind of peeking into there against Thomas, but he doesn't try to do anything. Frank on the outside now to Szilard, but leaves so much space that he just lets Vamos by almost for free. Frank going off the track there. And as they go into the next corner, Frank is still ahead of Vamos. That looked a bit tricky. So it's Robert, Linus, Thomas, Szilard, Frank, Vamos and Tibor. Zillert, I think there was on the grass, has a very bad exit now as Frank tries to go for a move. Can see it from Vamos' point of view, and Frank is ahead of Zillert. Frank now trying to find his turn-in point, does it nicely. We know that Frank is sometimes a bit too careful when other cars are around him, that he just leaves so much space that he has no chance of keeping the position. But in this case he did it very, very nicely. Oh, and again, as I commentator's curse, as I say that, he takes too much speed into one of the fast right-handers and is immediately all the way on the back as Vamos almost crashes into Zillert, if I'm not mistaken. Not quite sure what happened there. But over the line as they started, it's Robert, Linus, Thomas, and then in all those battles, there's actually a huge gap already, 5.7 seconds to Tibor. And he's in the group with Zillert, Frank and Vamos. Thomas chasing P1 and 2, but they seem to just be going away from him slightly throughout every corner, here and there. It's, Linus and Robert show the kind of pace they have. Tibor attempting an overtake attempting an overtake on Zillert. Attempting an overtake attempt. Great wording. But out of here would have had to get a significantly better exit in order to make it there on the back straight. And it looked as if he didn't quite get that. Even though Frank was completely on the grass, it seems as if he didn't actually lose that much, right? Of course he lost positions, but he's right at the back of Zillert and Tibor again because they've been losing so much time as well on the guys ahead. As they go over the line, Robert actually a tenth faster than Linus, but Linus able to keep up. And then Thomas, as expected, a bit slower than that. And Zillert, Tibor, Frank, Vamos. Me when I attempt to attempt. I'm doing my best to attempt to commentate the race. Looks like Tibor has better pace. But isn't quite sure how to find a way past. And Zillert's exits out of this corner we just went through are quite good. So that helps, as this is basically one of the two overtaking opportunities, the other being into T2. The main straight into T1. Not really an overtaking opportunity unless you're all the way up the inside already. Linus only 0.7 away from Robert. They're going for it. Robert getting so close to the grass there. At the point when you go back on the throttle in that last corner, it feels as if you're still pointing towards the outside of the track, off the track. And then you just have to manage to still get the turning on throttle to stay on track, as Linus goes a tenth faster. Robert driving away, not quite. It looks as if Linus is just as, if not very slightly faster, but can he make a move? Tibor now losing a little bit of ground on Zillert. So Zillert has got the room now to try to get into his groove and do the best possible times. So he won't have to actively defend for 24 minutes. Robert, you gotta duck to go faster. I'm not sure if ducking helps in the GT car. Maybe it does in the kart. Both of them driving very well. I think Robert was slightly faster again on this lap, right? But barely no difference between them. Yes, 1/10 of a difference again. 99.0% grip, so quite good now, and it will improve to maximum grip around halfway of the race, maybe slightly later than halfway. You know, struggling a little bit here when you can go back on the throttle. And again, Robert eking out the 10th, singular 10th, because of that. Linus was significantly off track there, wasn't he? So that's 0.5 or so that he lost. It's the first time one of them makes a somewhat major mistake. And Robert profits off it. $34.6 to $35.1. Thomas Jansch driving a very relaxed race, doesn't quite have the pace to keep up with the guys in front, but has a huge gap to the back and is also consistently faster than Szilard. Szilard under a little more pressure, but he does have a couple second gap right now to Tibor, who's going to try to make that back up throughout the race. But Szilard 4/10 fast on his last lap. And then Frank also a bit lonely, as he is not fast enough to keep up with Szilard and Tibor, but right now significantly faster than Vamos. Let's go on board with Robert. I know that generally speaking he tends to correct less, he has a somewhat smoother driving style than Linus, but of course, as usual, as I say that, he goes slightly on the grass, has to correct a bit. But not a lot of time lost because of it. 34.2 is a very good time. Can he build a bit of a gap against Linus? And of course, there's the gravel. So another opportunity for Linus to make 1 or 2 tenths back up. And he does goes from 1.5 or so gap to 1.3. We can see Frank and Vamos go on the back straight there, as Robert and Linus round out the lap. So them around half a lap or so away again. I think Vamo's having some sort of issue there on the exit. Always interesting to see how big only 1.4 seconds is. Yeah, true. I think we've gotten used to some of the cars being so close on the track sometimes, where you just have 2 or 3 tenths of a gap. But right now, Robert doing an amazing job. Last lap was a tenth slower again, but here Lino's going a bit too far over the inside, unsettling the car. And there's a tenth or so gone again. Gotta really nail almost every corner, or get close to nailing every corner. You want to make up time to Robert. You would think that because these cars are slower, that a second gap would smaller, right? But I guess they're still fast enough. Maybe you also underestimate a little bit how fast these cars are, because in sim racing we tend to drive pretty fast cars, especially with how popular GT3s are. And this is obviously not that. But they're also not slow by any stretch of the imagination. Last lap from Lino's very good, also more committed throughout T1 and T2. So for the first time in a couple laps, we see just saw the 0 before the dot, 0.9 seconds again. There's not much between them. Both of them, I think, were pretty well prepared coming into this. Neither of them having actually, they haven't actually raced against each other, I think. As far as I know, also not in other series. So had no idea coming into this how fast exactly the other would be, I think. But as the rest of the field kind of spreads out, with all the drivers finding slotting in the order, any small mistake could make the difference here between Robert and Linus. Coming over the line, 34.233 and 34.228. That's insane. Could be staged, scripted, for them to be exactly as fast as each other. Linus struggling on the exit of T3. That's gonna cost him a good 2 tenths, I think. But then Robert going a bit wide there, so Linus is going to make that back up almost immediately. And they're back to a 1.1 second gap. Every time you go through these fast right-handers, there's just not much of a mistake separating you from a very quick corner versus being on the grass on the exit and then having trouble finding your way back onto the track. It's always a little bit on the knife's edge here in Brands Hatch. Also feels as if, because this, I mean, generally speaking, you have an advantage if you're behind. A full second is probably a bit too much for Linus to grab a significant toe. But also on this track, the advantage is obviously minimal there. A lot of corners and very little straight line. But if Linus can just get a little bit closer, then he will get a slight advantage. .9, still not quite enough. 1.0 again. I think Vamos is having some sort of problem. Luckily he's stationary next to the track. Or he just... maybe he just let them by. Just really didn't want to disrupt the fight for P1. Which is respectable. Big correction there from Linus. Was very close to the gravel there. The last lap I didn't even talk about that. It was just 12 thousandths of a second of difference between the two again. And then this one, a tenth of a difference, and that's only because Robert did purple. We should be on optimal grip now, right? Yes, 99.7%, so basically optimal grip. Oh, hits the inside of the curb and almost spins there as he tries to go back on the throttle completely off the track. After he got bounced out of the corner, because I think he hit the grass there on the inside. Then some sort of issue there, so he doesn't go back on the throttle. So that costs him so much time. Yeah, we can look at that again in the replay, just to see what happens. It's gonna go backwards here a little bit, so as he turns in, he goes a bit too far on the inside and his wheel goes down off the curb onto the grass, and then he almost loses the car there on the outside. So much correction going on, significantly sideways. That hurt. That is going to, I don't want to say ruin his chances, but Robert has to make a mistake now. Yeah, brown flag moment. He'll have some time between the races to change pants though. Thomas at this point also into the 34s. That's pretty good as well. Trouble finding the apex here. This is such a difficult corner. You gotta come pretty far from the outside there and then find the rotation to get a late apex where you can actually go back on the throttle instead of feeling as if you're stuck on the inside for ages. It's clearly being what Thomas was trying to do coming from the outside there, but just not finding the rotation to actually ever get to the apex. Linus now half a second slower than Robert. It looks as if now that Robert is just a bit too far away, he's losing that extra bit of pace that he needed to try to stay up there. However, I wouldn't say that quali decided this race, because if Linus had qualified in front and then did that mistake that we just saw directly in front of Robert, then Robert would have gotten the position, I think. Looked like a good end of the lap for Linus. Robert 34.4 and Linus also 34.4. You just don't make up any time there anymore. As I said, this would require a major mistake from Robert now. I think both of them signed up for the next race as well. I'll take a look really quickly. So there's more to come of this, stay tuned. Yes, both of them are signed up for the next one. Cuts very nicely there over the inside. As long as your outside wheels stay fully on the track, you can get away with it there. You can also cut a bit more here, as long as you don't do it so much that your inside wheel dip down significantly and then unsettle the car. Frank letting Robert safely lap. With this outside view, it would be nice if someone in chat can give me some feedback really quickly on how the view looks, especially regarding the bit rate, because they can go a little bit crazy if there's movement on the whole screen. But I think it got a little bit better starting with the last stream, at least that's what I hope. And Frank also letting Linus by cleanly. Linus 34.1 purple now. But again, even with a comparably bad lap from Robert, it's just 0.3 of a difference with 3 seconds to go and only 5 minutes and 30 seconds more in the race. I think it got a bit better. It would be fine if you can still, even if you notice that it gets worse, basically, it's I would have to just increase the bitrate even more if I wanted to prevent that. If I'm not mistaken, as they go over the line, it gets very close if this is 2 more laps or 3 more laps. I think they just about only... No, if it's 3 more laps or 4 more laps, excuse me. I think they just about only do 3 more laps, but we'll see. I think the time will be up just before they go over the line. If they still go over the line, then it could get tight for people who didn't calculate that someone would be this fast, basically. Considering that Robert has had a very clean race with a very good average lap time. Now towards the end of the race it feels as if there was actually more for Linus. He can go very slightly faster. But that's what I thought in the beginning of the race as well. And then it kind of turned around again as Robert just found another 10th here and there. Or another thousandth. Thousandth. Difficult word. Will they get into the 33 is the question. They go over the line. I think there was a 3:07 on the clock as they went over the line. So that would mean that they will only be doing 2 more laps and not a third. So if any of the drivers calculated with exactly 2 more laps, that's some relief for you. You won't have to save a whole lap of fuel. Robert fully on the grass here, but he can afford that. Gap down to 2.7, but just not enough for the time we have remaining. Other than that, the field spreading out. Lots of correction there from Linus as he tries to find some rotation. And let's look at it again. Look at the track map in the top right. Look at when Robert goes over the line and then at the time. And he will have 1:33 or 1:32 remaining. So as I said, only 1 more lap now. Both Linus and Robert starting their last laps. Both of them so quick, clearing Thomas by 15 and 18 seconds respectively, who is not a slow driver by any means. So as they're just trying to get home now on their last lap, too much of a gap between them. Competition that we found for Robert is again in a red car, just like Kai was in some previous races. So Robert exclusively battling red cars in this series. And as they enter the last corner, just don't get overzealous on the throttle, don't go on the gravel there. Robert goes over the line, amazing P1, absolutely deserved, manages to be almost 3 seconds ahead of Linus, who also drove so well. That one mistake where it looked as if he almost spun, but managed to stay on track and still keeping a huge gap over all the other drivers. Thomas coming back in a respectable P3, 33 seconds ahead of Zillard, the field having spread out so much over the course of the race. And Thomas driving very solidly. So Frank comes over the line in P6, the first lapped driver. We're still waiting here for Zillard to finish his last lap. Who is going to come home in P4, which I think he'll be very happy with this huge gap ahead of him. You can't expect him to make that up to try to get on the podium. So the best realistic position that he could have gotten as he finishes up the race with a personal best 36.4. And back there, Tibor is yet to go over the line as the last person to finish the race on the same lap as the leaders. in P5, even though it just showed that the wrong way at the top. And then Vamos in P7. Nice race. Was a bit unfortunate that that mistake happened for Linus, so he wasn't quite able to keep close enough to Robert to ever get a real advantage of the toe. As we talked about earlier, the toe not being as strong on this track as on some other tracks, but still, if you're directly behind someone, you just gain free time as long as you don't get too irritated by not being able to see properly into the next corner when there's someone directly in front of you. Good race, felt constant pressure from Linus, says Robert. That was visible, yes. That was visible. So, stay tuned. We still have a second race lined up. Don't go anywhere. And we'll be back in around 9 minutes from now. And we're back for the second race. Robert a bit late to join again, other than that almost the same field, except without Vamos. So we'll see. I'm pretty interested in how quali will go now, because if Linus pulls it off and puts it on pole, then it could be an entirely different story. Linus going out directly in front of Funk, then in front of Zillert, everyone else deciding to leave a sizable gap. Thomas probably not interested in running into the back of Zillert again, but he should be fine coming out now, I think. Zillert losing the car there on the curb on his outlap. I heard Frank in the gravel. Luckily, since it's his outlap, doesn't matter too much. So early into qualifying, they'll obviously have significantly less grip again than they were used to from the end of last race, and it looks as if that immediately hits home for Linus as he dips a wheel onto the grass on the exit of the last corner. Fixes braking point, misses the apex very slightly. The usual issues basically that you would anticipate from someone who just came from a slightly more rammed track, almost loses the car there into two. Clearly has TC off. .3 first sector. Funk 0.9 slower, as expected, I would say. Still at 29.9. And the others still not out. Not out of the pits. It's set nicely. Takes the curb there, but struggles a little bit to try to get back on the throttle. Very good second to last corner. And finds reasonable rotation to get back on the throttle there without driving off the road on the outside. It's a 35.2. Does anyone still know what pole was in the last race? Immediately dips the tire onto the gravel, so this is not his lap. So that coming over the line for his first fast lap, that's a 37.0. Thibaut and Thomas still on the in the pits, and Robert not on the server yet. I think Robert needs the time here. Shouldn't make it more difficult for himself. But he is signed up, I'm not tripping. 34.09 was the pole, is that the question? That would, are you sure? That would have been pretty insane considering how little grip they have. The best time on the practice server is a 33.8. So I don't think that 34.0 could have been pole. 34.5, I see, okay. Thanks, Robert. By the way, you should be on the server here, instead of telling us what the time is. In case you forgot, you're signed up for the second race. Linus over the line, but not an improvement, as we saw him dip a wheel onto the gravel in T1. Still at 36.8, solid improvement. I took a pit stop. Don't make it more difficult for yourself, Robert. You have competition here. But I gotta get some water. Gotta go to the bathroom. I'm here rooting for Linus and Thomas. That's nice. Thomas has been very solid so far. Linus even more so, even though I'm sure Linus would have liked that P1, but we'll see how this race will turn out. Linus's first sector on this lap 28.9 purple, but then the second sector not so much. Still potential for good improvement. So that personal best first sector, but not personal best second sector. And Thomas still in the pits. That was already a good lap, 34.7. So with pole being 34.5 in last quali, and the grip still improving a little bit throughout quali. He was complaining about the hard tires and a lot of understeer. Yes, with the setup on these cars, you have to make them turn in, both with the setup and with the with your driving style. We shared a setup in the Discord server that I made that I think is pretty good. If you still face issues with understeer, you can make the rear a little bit harder, the spring rate. But yeah. Learning how to properly make this car turn in is something all the drivers have to do to get used to the cars. I'm here rooting for T1, also hoping Zillard lose their friends. Well, so far you picked sides wrong, I think. Zillard was ahead of T1, wasn't he? Gotta trail harder, yes. The right amount of trail braking. You run into understeer surprisingly easy if you brake a bit too much. So the usual... what you would usually think that more brakes equals more weight transfer and therefore also more rotation, that stops working pretty soon with these cars because they're just not quite as capable as most of the stuff we drive in sim racing. It's not a GT3 car, and it's just a different challenge. I'm rooting for Frank and Robert. You already got your win rooting for Robert there last race. We'll see how this one will turn out. 34.7 already pretty solid from Linus, but we know that Robert can go slightly faster. He already did it. It says outlap there in the top, but I'm pretty sure this isn't his outlap. I think his last lap was his outlap, so this is his first actual sector now of the session. And immediately purple, 28.8. Sticks a bit too much on the inside here. You have to make sure you approach this corner fully from the outside, take a very late apex, so you can go back on the throttle properly. And that didn't look perfect yet. So make sure he doesn't go back on the throttle too early, otherwise he would have been on the grass out there. But as long as you're still on those kind of grass overgrown stones, you're actually completely fine. The grip on them is decent. Again, fully using the width of the track there on the outside, the second to last corner. And here try to get a good exit, minimal correction there on the steering wheel. But it looked solid. Is he already gonna be ahead of Linus with this lap? He is 34.5, so is equaling the pole time from last race. Even though we did spot one or two minor mistakes, and he also didn't have a purple second sector. So he really has to put it together to improve even more on this, but there is still improvement to gain for him. Linus starting a new lap here. Pumas yet to get out of the pits. Maybe he is doing the last two third challenge, as he knows the first two are just a bit too far away. But if something happens between the first two, there's obviously potential for him to capitalize on that, and he won't be there to take a free position if he starts from the back. Linus, his sector time shows purple in the top left. That's because their timing sheet is only looking at tenths, basically. He was 200ths or something slower, so very good first sector, albeit very slightly slower than Robert's. At least on Robert's fastest lap. The current lap of Robert, not good enough. And then after the second sector, that wasn't even a personal best for Linus, he is 1.6 hundredths behind Robert's current provisional pole lap. So let's stay on him. I think both of these corners are struggling a little bit on the exit here, going fully on the grass, and that's the lap gone away again. So that's gonna lose more than 2 tenths and effectively ruin this lap completely. And as he comes over the line, he has 2 more attempts, provided he still has fuel. First sector again, 28.8 from Linus. Solid. Yeah, struggling with understeer is pretty normal for this car. It's nice to have a car that tends to understeer a little bit, considering the nature of this series as being it being completely open. Everyone can join this, and therefore it's nice to have a car that is easy to drive, but you can still set it up so it will slide. But you have to make it turn in. If you make it too oversteery, it won't like you anymore in the exits. Which is why I would be careful with making them even harder on the rear. And with a not even personal best second sector, but I think still a good one, is Linus going to improve? He improves, and he is 800ths away from Robert right now. So this is his final attempt as he hits the curb, and T1 is therefore a bit late on the throttle. Tibor also currently improving, so it looks as if he'll go in front of Frank on the timing sheets. Very far on the outside here, but again, because those kind of grass overgrown stones have pretty good grip, it's good to go there. And it pays off. Linus is currently on the way for provisional pole, but only slightly, by a couple hundreds. And Robert is actually going slightly faster again. Matching his first sector and then going for 25.9 second sector. Let's go on board with Robert as he enters the last corner. Can he improve on both his current provisional pole and his last pole lap from last race? No, he can't. Not a perfect last sector. So this is Linus's chance now as we watch him do almost the same mistake again, going all the way off the track there. But I think this time it didn't lose him that much. So depending on how the rest of his third and the second half of his second sector looked that we didn't see, maybe it's still an improvement, but it isn't. It's not an improvement. So Robert is on pole again, very, very strong. Tibor barely ahead of Frank. We watch at Zilla driving, however, he is not on a personal best. So the other positions likely won't change anymore, with Thomas clearly trying to go for a last to third challenge. Tibor into the pits. It's still not coming over the line, but it's not going to improve, if I see correctly. Oh, he does actually improve very slightly, very good last sector. But 2 seconds gap ahead of him, and also 1.4 gap behind him. His target is going to be to just pump out ideal lap times to try to be far enough ahead that Thomas can't catch him anymore. And that's going to be a big ask, as we know that Thomas is quite quick around here. So familiar picture, Robert on pole again, amazing lap. Linus again very fast, but didn't quite put it together. The pace was there to go slightly faster than Robert, but nailing every single corner here in Brands Hatch always hard. Then big gap, 2 seconds to Zillard. Between Linus and Zillard is probably where Thomas belongs. Regarding pace, we saw that the race before. But this time he'll have to get past Zillard, then Tibor, and then Frank. Tibor and Frank separating 300s. This is gonna be a carbon copy of the last race, where Robert just tries to stay in front just about, or does Linus, now that he knows that he'll struggle to make up the place just in pace, maybe he'll go for a bit more risk, trying to do something funny into T2 or something along those lines. I'll be up for it. Meep meep. So, Robert, Tibor, Linus, Zillard, Frank and Thomas in the starting grid. And as the lights go on and all of them press drive. They get away. They get away well. And they go 3 wide there in the rear. Is it going to be problematic? It looks as if they're managing it well. Linus very close here in T2 behind Robert, but not quite able to make a move as Robert kind of closed the door on him. So it's Robert, Linus, Zillard, Thomas already ahead of Frank and Tibor. So barely lost anything as he goes fully over the grass, but is far enough ahead so he doesn't have to worry about losing a position, I think. So his next target is going to be Zillard, and then he's basically at home again. Linus 0.6, 0.5 away, this time has to ensure that he doesn't lose Robert, he doesn't lose this advantage that he gets on both the main and the back straight, being at least slightly in the tow. Thomas with a mistake, I think, but Frank not able to capitalize on it. Oh, as we looked away, Linus dropped behind Zillard. I assume he just went on the grass, We'll look at that in the replay really quickly. It was very far in the green here. I think we saw that and then we switched away from it around this moment. And then he cuts here so much. Oh, he got a slowdown penalty for the cut. And then he immediately takes it and effectively has to let Szilard back by. I'm sure that he'll get that position back, but that costs too much time. With Linus and Robert being basically tight on pace. This major mistake from Linus is going to cost him a chance of going to P1, I think. Of trying to go to P1. Thomas now directly behind Linus in the back, and as we talked about it earlier, if Thomas hadn't started from the back, then he would have been a couple seconds ahead now and potentially had the chance, and Linus hits Szilard. Szilard going on the grass and going back on the track, luckily safely. It didn't look like that bad of a hit, but in the middle of the corner, I suppose Szilard then just lost control of the car. Let's look at that again. From Szilard's perspective in third person, so we can see when Linus hits him exactly. In the middle of that corner, Szilard just brakes a bit early and Linus tries to take that line where you come further from the outside, take more speed into it and hit the apex later, which is the correct line, but of course Linus not allowed to just run into the back of Szilard. So there's potential for a penalty there. However, whether that is going to make a difference, I'm not sure. Linus is going to check out here, I'm pretty sure. And any time penalty, even if significant, would likely not throw him back any positions. Pretty rude move there from Linus. Not a big hit, but a costly one. But Szilard unfortunately never really gets the opportunity to try to defend against Thomas. That could have been a nice fight, even though it would be difficult keeping Thomas behind for 26 minutes, realistically. And now I'm expecting Szilard to be faster than Frank and Tibor. Tibor also lost the position against Frank, we weren't really watching that. He completely misses the fast right-hander here and loses even more space towards Frank. I wanted to see Szilard defend, yes, same. I think Thomas is too fast for Szilard to effectively defend this, but also this is a difficult track to overtake at. So, who knows? I would have liked to see it. But this unfortunately being exactly what Linus didn't hope for, after not quite getting pole again. With that mistake going all the way over the grass and him getting a cut penalty that forced him to lose around 2 seconds on track, but effectively also lost a position and then lost even more time. This means that he'll really have to get going. His last lap was so good, 3.5 tenths faster than Robert, that if he keeps up that pace, he might actually go back to the back of Robert. But we know Robert is going to go faster again as well, especially if he has to. Yeah, we're back to a 34.3. Dino's not quite able to match him this time. Similarly to the end of the last race, I think this would only turn into a fight again if Robert makes a mistake, which is not out of the question. But he's definitely not inconsistent. Dino's hitting too hard over the curb there again, dipping his left front wheel down into the grass and settling the car significantly and losing him around 3/10 again. Robert just smoothly navigating this track. Doesn't feel as if he has trouble finding rotation, even though he doesn't like steer in hard or anything. Slightly over the grass there again, but only going on it as his tires are not as laterally loaded anymore, and then he still finds his way back on the track. And he also hits the curb there, similarly to what we saw from Linus in T3 earlier, and gets bounced off out of the corner. So 34.7, not bad by any means, and in fact almost the same lap time as Linus. Thomas 37.0, and we know he can go a bit faster than that. So that on this lap actually faster than him with a personal best 36.4. And then Thibaut made an overtake on Frank. We can look at that really quickly, and actually as we go onto them it already happens, and I think Frank is just going to make a mistake here as he enters this corner too fast, misses the apex and then goes onto the gravel and effectively gives Thibaut the position. Good for Thibaut. Effectively, I think not in a battle with Zillard. Zillard just a bit faster than him, and also 5.7 seconds gap already. But we'll see. I would guess, without having looked at the incident in detail more, that Linus has to drive out at least 10 seconds to Thomas in order to make sure that that he's not losing a position due to a penalty. If Zillard either decides to report or race control decides that it was bad enough, basically, that it warrants a penalty, even though there was no explicit report. In the series, there's not, like, nobody necessarily has to report for something to get penalized. It depends on how bad it is, basically. Thibaut 37.4, that should be fast enough to keep Frank behind and make a bit of a gap, if he can keep that up. Thomas 35.0, that's the pace where we expect him roughly, I would say. Thomas also dips the wheel down the inside on G3. Is Linus catching up? No, I don't think so. Last lap was Robert was 4/10 faster, and Thomas almost loses the car here on the exit. He doesn't have to risk anything. Zillert is too far away, even though I imagine he would like to stay as close as possible to Linus. Cuts a lot here over the grass. Oh, and he got a cut penalty for that. He's lifting. So that's some free time for Zillert, but again, I don't think it's too significant. And Robert made a major mistake, I think. Linus is now right at the back of him again. We'll look at that really quickly. Let's go on board with Robert here in the replay. And I think he will go out the outside. Oh no, he had a cut penalty, and he tries to take it by slowing down under a target speed. That's the alternative way of taking these automatic cut penalties that the game gives you. But he doesn't do it decisively enough, so he is waiting a little bit for it to disappear, then slows down a little more, and then gets back up to speed. So he arguably loses a bit more time there than he absolutely had to. Probably also cut too much over the grass on the inside. Potentially the same mistake that Linus did on the first lap. But again, I think Robert was on this lap already slightly faster again. When he really has to, it seems so far as if he still has everything under control, still has an ace up his sleeve. So over the line, I think this lap was significantly better from Robert than what Linus did. Yeah, Robert deciding to go for purple laps now that he has to again. Make a gap 34.2 on this stage of the race. I think not perfect grip yet. Yeah, 99.1. It's very good. Again, just as a reference, 33.8. Was the best time on the practice server in 8.0. That was my time. As far as I know, Linus also has a 33.8 on the server. Just like a couple hundred slower or something like that. Robert didn't practice on the server as far as I know, but I assume that his PB is going to be around there as well. Struggling a little bit here again when to go back on the throttle and running a bit over the grass. Comparable laps now, I think, for both of them. So Robert keeping the 2-second gap intact. 34.3 versus 34.5. Robert using the gearing very nicely here. It looked as if he revved up a bit high there. You have a bit of free room when it comes to your RPM range at the top because you want to shift significantly before the car revs out. But in a situation where you're already approaching a braking zone, so you can't actually use that gear that you would shift up to very much, it can make sense to just stay in the gear you already are, rev a bit too high, quote unquote. Which you can without breaking the car. And Robert goes on the grass there on the entry, but catches it very nicely and I think barely loses time. Insane maneuver. Definitely not intended. Let's look at it really quickly in the replay from the outside. It's the next corner, isn't it? Dips a wheel on the grass, just drifts through it, cuts nicely over the inside, doesn't run danger of going off track on the outside. Nice. And to rub salt in the wound, Linus actually made a significantly worse mistake on the same lap that we didn't see. 1.7 seconds off in the last lap. Robert's lap was just fine. Linus around the 10-second gap right now to Thomas that I had assumed he would need in case there is a penalty because of the collision with Zillard. Ew, that didn't sound good. That was revving a little bit too high. I think Linus trying out some things here, trying to be a bit more aggressive with the car, and generally speaking that doesn't work as he drifts through this corner and spins and is in the gravel. Now he has to make sure that he rejoins safely as Thomas is going to arrive. But they're fine, Thomas far enough in the back. Yeah, big mistake from Linus. I think he's trying too much, he's trying to do too much. Whenever we look at Robert's onboards, it seems so relaxed. And he's finding the time doing that. So there were 1 or 2 laps before this where Thomas was actually a bit faster than Linus, but on average Linus should easily be able to stay in front as Linus goes over the gravel again. This is actually Thomas' opportunity, but he doesn't go for it. I know that these two drive together. Maybe Thomas doesn't want to ruin Linus' race, even though I was hoping for a fight there. Maybe everything completely intentional from Linus as he just tries to fall back to show Thomas the line, right? The gap to Robert now 15 seconds, he can relax up there in front. Even if he gets a cut penalty again, or even if he spins out probably, as long as he doesn't break his car, he's gonna be fine. And similarly to the back, it's about 17.4 seconds away. So these guys can relax here. As Linus trying to throw the car into the corner, and it just doesn't work. Smooth as king here. Trying to find the right amount of braking pressure as you trail into the corner. Maybe do a slightly exaggerated steering in movement if you think you can't find any other rotation otherwise. Thomas going for the bump draft. So on board with Robert with 9 minutes remaining. He doesn't have to worry about anything, he's just gonna take it home. Very good for his rating. Not every race he's done so far went perfectly, although the one bad one I can think about wasn't his own fault. Had some technical issues there with his rig on Spa that allowed Charlotte to take 2 races in a row. to win 2 races in a row. I mean, Robert all the way on the grass here, counter assist a little bit, doesn't matter. He's gonna lose 1 or 2 tenths there. Slide into the first one. Even though there was no aggressive steering input, that was all just rotation provoked with the right pedal input. Here as well, you can see the car coming around, even though he wasn't really doing anything with the steering wheel. And that's how you're supposed to do it, in my opinion. Because then it becomes really easy to use a little bit more, a little bit less brake pressure to ensure that you actually perfectly hit the apex. Something that when you're already on the limit and you can't really steer more, you can't do that kind of minimal correction with the steering wheel. It's going to be more efficient if you manage to do it with the braking pedal. Slightly on the grass there again, but doesn't go for another drift. Cuts very heavily here. That could be a slowdown penalty, although I think he might be fine. Oh no, it is a slowdown penalty. But again, because of the previous mistakes from Linus, and I think him trying to show Thomas the line right now, as he kind of gave up on trying to fight for the lead, Robert has the room for error now. Let's look at what they're doing in the back. Frank 4 seconds away from Tibor. Not quite sure when you can get back on the throttle. You can't actually see the exit there. It's even worse in this corner. You don't see the corner at all when you're approaching. You need other reference points. Let's see how the mid-race practice is going for Thomas and Linus. Linus bad exit there as Thomas goes past. I'm not sure if that was intended or not. Oh, Linus has a penalty again. So maybe this is yet to turn into a battle. Thomas took the opportunity to take the position off who I think is his teammate. Robert Purple 34.2, very strong. Again, let's see if he can get into the 33s, but last race around, I don't think they managed it right. Linus has more than enough of a gap to behind, so even if he gets a penalty, he will stay at least on P3. If he manages to overtake Thomas now, then it might depend on whether there's going to be a penalty, whether Siddharth reports, what race control thinks. But for now, Linus has to actually manage to get back to Thomas as he again almost loses the car in the same corner that we've already seen him make a bigger mistake before. Drifts around. Too much rotation now. I think as he's trying to find those last few tenths, he's just trying a bit too hard, trying a bit too much, and then losing the very good pace he already had. Or he has some sort of issue now, actually. He's slowing down. Or was that another cat penalty? I'm not even sure where he got it. Let's look at the replay really quickly and try to find out where he got that cat penalty. Oh yeah, did he get it here? Yeah, I think he got it here. He immediately, like, he doesn't exit the corner properly anymore. He's too far back now. He's not going to get past Thomas anyway now. On board with Zillert, who's having a bit of a lonely race. Again, not fast enough to get anywhere near the top 3, but significantly faster than Tibor. Very solid 35.9 that he just did. With P2 and 3 having issues, that kind of time could have actually put him around there. At Robert 34.0 now, he wants to know it. Is it going to be a 33 for him in this race? He's going to finish this lap, and then again we'll have to look at whether there's going to be another lap after that or not. But I don't think so. I think he was a bit slower on average this race than the last. Yeah, it's not going to quite work out. He would have to go over the line now to get another lap. Instead he goes out onto the grass. And as he goes over the line, we're only doing 127 more, but a lap is a 134 or so. He tries to drift around this corner. Manages to do it a little bit. Induces the slide here. Is he going to be able to take it all the way to the exit? Nah, not really. I'll give 4 out of 10 points for that drift. He as well just leaves the drift a bit too late. The car probably not set up in order to do this optimally. That one looked pretty good, I would say. Had some trouble initiating it at the start. And for another one, but doesn't get it sideways enough to keep up the drift throughout the corner here as well. Still 12 seconds more that he can lose with drift, so surely nothing to worry about. That one looked good. That one wasn't sideways enough. And as he's just messing about, as you can see him drift into the last corner and coming out of there. He wins another race, back-to-back race wins. Very well done, Linus, having had some issues there. Again, wasn't able to put it on pole. And then Robert was just so consistent. Thomas coming home in P2. Very well done. Clearly didn't want to overtake Linus at first, but then does it. Linus P3, still a solid position. As he's new in the series, that's still some decent rating gain probably. As he'll have to do 3 more races in order to get a rating. So that coming on P4. Solid race again, even though a bit lonely, just too fast for the back markers and not fast enough to get to the front. And then Tibor and Frank are going to come home in P5 and P6 respectively. Well, that was it for today. Was hoping for the inevitable Robert versus Linus fight. Unfortunately, it didn't quite come to be. Also, the defense from Zillert against Thomas was cut short as Zillert got hit by Linus. That's how it goes sometimes. I hope that you'll tune in or join us for the next race next week. That is going to be Barcelona, but the moto version, so without the silly chicane. And see you there. Goodbye.